shine, and I feel that when I'm with you, it's alright. I know it's right. To you, I'll give the world. To you, I'll never be cold, 'cause I feel that when I'm with you, it's alright. I know it's right. And the songbirds are singing like they know.
When I sat down to write David's service, I was listening to my playlist of the classics: Meatloaf, Boston, AC/DC, the Eagles, when Only the Good Die Young by Billy Joel came on. When I listened to the lyrics, I couldn't help but laugh. There were a few phrases that felt like they were just so David. After meeting with Sherry and hearing some of the stories about him and his crew, the following seemed quite appropriate. Now, I apologize, I don't usually sing in public, and I am not a singer, but I'll try to do it justice. You might have heard that I run with a dangerous crowd. We ain't too pretty, we ain't too proud. We might be laughing a bit too loud. That never hurt no one. And they say there's a heaven for those who wait. Some say it's better, but I say it ain't. Rather laugh with the sinners and cry with the saints. The sinners are much more fun. You know that only the good die young. I was expecting applause after that. Oh. I'm only teasing, that was absolutely terrifying for me. Even the song title speaks to me about who David was. Not many people would consider 60 to be exceptionally young, but David was one of those guys that didn't believe that age was a number. It was a mindset. For him, 60 was too soon. It was too young. At this time, I'd like to bless this service in prayer. If you could please bow your heads. Dear Father, we call upon your name to give thanks for the life of David. May we cherish the memories that we have of him as we reflect upon his life today. We pray for David's family and friends. We pray that you will be their comfort and their support at this time. In Jesus' name, amen. My name is Candace Anderson, owner of Reflections Funeral Services in Vermilion, and I have been asked to officiate the service here today. Being asked to not only coordinate the service details, but to speak on behalf of the family, there really is no greater honor. To know that you trust me implicitly to honor David's memory, I thank you. As I listened to my classic rock and roll blaring through my computer speakers, I contemplated what David would want today to look like. And I realized he would want people to focus on who he was and the good times. Tears are inevitable, and being sad is okay. There's no question that the loss of David is going to leave a void in many of your hearts. A spot that only time can start to slowly heal. But even time never really creates the feeling of getting over it. Grief is a lifelong sentence when you say goodbye to someone that you love. For David, though, I know that he would want you to look back on today with a smile. Listening to the way that his sister and friends described him, it was real. I love that it was implied that he was just an ordinary type of guy, because being an ordinary guy was what he was all about. He didn't want to prove that he was better than anyone else. He was well-liked, with a kind heart, and with a venturous way about him, always being the one to get the ball rolling on numerous skiing, snowmobiling, or riding trips. He had a love for all things speed, vehicles, hot rods, motorbikes, and he valued his family and friends in the highest regard. He welcomed many into his circle with open arms, and his home of Dewberry captured his heart. He was community-oriented and proud to be from here. There were so many traits that he possessed that so few can really master like he had. He had a zest for life, no matter the circumstances. He was passionate about living life each day, seeking every opportunity to make life an adventure. His only weakness was his sister, and even more so, his niece. Becoming an uncle was one of his greatest blessings. He absolutely adored Kate, even when his temper would flare up, which he always apologized for. Family was a core part of David, and one of his best attributes was that he made many a friend a part of his family as well. Being the life of the party was almost an understatement for David. He always found the energy to keep up with or exceed everyone else. I can only imagine the antics, which Sherry will be sharing with us shortly. Upon that note, I would like to welcome her forward to share the eulogy.
I'd like to start by thanking the Dewberry and Clandonald first responders. There are no words for what you've done for us and for your communities. We're so fortunate to have people like you. Thank you to everyone who has sat with us and held space for us during this past week. Thank you for all the love, the phone calls, the warm meals, the help in the house and in the yard, all of it. Kate and I felt your love and support, and it really did carry us. Speaking of Kate, thank you, kid. You've been my right-hand man, and you've done so much this past week, including looking after me. You're the best. Ginny and I are, so are you. But you all are really, we're so fortunate. Thank you all so much for coming here today to celebrate the life of Kate's uncle, your friend and my brother. I apologize ahead of time for any swearing during your stories. It all comes from the purest of hearts and is meant to honor one of the kindest souls I've ever had the privilege to know and to love, David Durnin. On September 6, 1962, David John William Durnin was the firstborn to Donna and Lori Durnin. He was the first everything in our family, so he was extra special. And he was showered with love from the moment he arrived. He was born in Edmonton, but Mom and Dad decided that Dewberry would be home. Time and life ever evolving took them back to Edmonton, then Vancouver, where I was born, and then eventually back to Dewberry, where David lived for the remainder of his days. Where does one really begin when trying to describe the life of such an amazing human with only a few words and a little bit of time? With the help of all of you, I'm going to give it my best shot. David arrived at Dewberry School in roughly grade 3 or 4. Terry Butt says he vividly remembers this new kid coming in, quiet and shy, but kind of trying to find his place in this new setting. He said David walked into class one day waving his arms and giving a little kick and yelled, "I know Kung Fu." And he really did love all the Bruce Lee movies. That was their intro to their forever friend. I guarantee you that not one of those kids in that class would have any ideas of the ventures that lay ahead with them and their new buddy. When I was about 8, we moved out to the farm. Our border collie dog was used to living in town and just kept running back in, and Mom used to send David back in to pick that dog up and bring it back home. Our dog's name was Tippy. That's the true story behind the infamous nickname Tippy Durnin. And truth be told, He didn't love that nickname. But hey, if he found something out that rubbed you, you and I both know that he'd be on it. For those of you who knew David in high school, I know for certain that you have at least a handful of stories to tell. One of mine is the time Mom woke me up in the middle of the night. I was in elementary school, and she says, "Get up, we're going to go find your brother." So in my jammies, I jumped in the truck, and off Mom and I went and searched for David. I remember clearly right beside the Mahaney house, meeting Jimmy McVitie's truck. And this is what I heard. "Hi, Donna." "Hi, Jimmy." "David in there, Jimmy?" "No, Donna, he's not in there." Mom says, "Everybody out of the truck, please." And I remember as a kid counting. It was a two-door truck. 3, 4, 7, 8, like 10. All these kids, and all of a sudden there was David Durnin laying face down on the floorboards of the half ton. Mom says in the truck, party was over for him. He came home with Mom and I. Dave was a hard worker and took so much pride in his work. Over the years, he worked for Roden Allen, Clay McVitie, Page Construction, Kevin Stone, High West. Here at High West, he worked his way up from Raycan to Push. From High West, he started his own consulting company, Durnin Consulting. He ended up he ended his working career at MCon, which was only 2 miles from home. A huge thank you to all our friends and his colleagues at MCon. David met a ton of lifelong friends through his work. He took such pride in his work, and he really was a perfectionist. I'd have to say, though, that his greatest accomplishments through work were the friendships that he made. David was always surrounded by friends. As a kid, I was always excited on the weekends to see who would come trailing out of the basement. It made Mom and Dad happy to have all those kids crash at our place, like mostly happy. It was Rocky Ryan, Darren Graham, Ian Hamilton, Kevin McDonald, the Rude Boys. There's so many. He always had such a wonderful group of friends. I think partly because he was such a great friend himself. David always said his friends were family, and I always heard him say, "Friends for life." Kate Maria is David's only niece. She was his pride and joy. There's no words to describe how deeply he loved you, Kate. Every day that David and I talked, he'd ask, "How's Kate doing?" He was the one we'd go to when we needed a shoulder, a soft place to land. He was always so happy to see us. He loved shopping for us and knew exactly what our clothing sizes were. Or he'd phone on Christmas Eve to find out what they were. But more than that, he loved spending time with us. He was an amazing listener, and we knew we could tell him anything, as he never judged us. His heart hurt when Kate's heart hurt. He was so good to her after her dad died. He went on trips with us, spent every holiday with us. Him and Jimmy Mack bought her an old car and helped her clean it up for the Fun Bob Derby. She was 8 years old. David suited her up in a helmet and gloves and rode shotgun when it was her turn to race. You all know that David's trademark was to tease. In fact, the more he liked you, the more he teased you. Kate told us at one time at Catholic school, she went to the priest to confession and said, "Like, my uncle teases me all the time." Kate, that teasing was just one of the ways he showed his love for you. And I promise you, it was a lot. This fall, Kate was having a tough time. Uncle David was the first one to drive into her apartment, give her a pep talk, send her for a haircut, and then take her out for supper. It broke his heart to see her heart breaking. He always did whatever he could to make us feel better. And Katie just loved listening to you play that violin. I'd look over from the piano and I'd see him wipe his tears away. He was a softie, but he was especially soft with you. Chief was his family too. He's 110 pounds of King Black German Shepherd. David did not train that dog one iota. He just loved him and fed him pork chops. Thank you, Lyle, for helping out with Chief. David Durnin experiences. Where to start? This world will just never be the same without him. His teasing, his jokes, his laughter, his temper, his love of adventure, the list goes on. His heart was huge. And the love he had for his family and friends, immense. Corey wrote, "What can I say about this guy? Known differently to many, Dave Durnin, or Tippy, was one of a kind. I don't have an older brother, but if I did, I imagine this would be the guy I would have wanted. Growing up, he always looked out for me, gave me shit as necessary, and taught me a lot of things, all useful, some really good, some less good, but it all came from the heart. And his heart was pure, his wit and humor sharp and pointed. I truly admire his character. I honestly don't know anyone who wasn't happy to see Tippy. The hours we spent talking and planning to water ski are cherished hours. Running out of gas on the shoe swap is a memory I'll never forget. He was not impressed with me. I was actually on that trip. And we got sent to buy $100 worth of ice, but we got lost coming back to the houseboat, and we showed up with $100 worth of water. Tippy, I'm going to miss you, pal. Thanks, Corey, for your words. They were perfect. David loved life. He loved his family and his friends. He loved his pets. He loved making people laugh, and he loved laughing. He loved adventure. He was just fun. No matter what went down, if David Durnin was involved, there would be a story to tell. If you weren't laughing at the time, once the dust settled, you'd definitely be laughing after. He was game for almost anything. Downhill skiing, water skiing, he even cross-country skied and did yoga with me a couple of times. He had dirt bikes and motorbikes and Harleys. He loved his time at Sturgis. He loved skidooing, going to the drags, skidooing in the mountains, hot rods, dune buggies. He even tried his hand at horseback riding a few times. He loved going on holidays, houseboat trips, fishing trips. He loved two-stepping. And you had to be in shape if you were going to two-step with him. Halloween dances, gardening, canning, cooking, gopher hunting with Sam was a big one. Skydiving, shopping. He was so much fun. And he'd try just about anything. Years ago, he had gotten this dirt bike from Jimmy McVitie. I think it was Jimmy. It was too big for him, and he didn't care. He wanted it, so he bought it. In David Durnin style, he had to perform and attempted a catwalk in front of the bar. It was a disaster, and he wiped out big time. He jumped on the bike and headed home. I remember him saying he could feel his pants flapping in the wind, so he put his hand back on his bum, and he reached back and he saw blood, and he said, I knew it was bad. So fast forward, I came home and I heard this commotion in Mom and Dad's room. And I walked down to see Granny and Mom, gauze, salve, a pink pair of silk panties, and David face down, ass up on the bed. Once they finished doctoring him, he stood up and wore those pink silk panties right out of the room. I told everyone. I think the guys on the rig even called him Silky for a few years after that. Harley said that one time him and David were driving gravel trucks for Dad and George Prost. I would have to assume that this would be a time in their lives where we could safely say these boys were young and stupid, and the dads were either trying to make men out of them or absolutely desperate for help. Either way, David and Harley decided they needed a bit of a break from all their hard work, so a little gravel truck race was in order. However it all unfolded, Harley said David ended up jumping the ditch and the whole front hood of the gravel truck flopped open. David won the race. I'm sure Dad and George were so proud of their boys. David needed his pants hemmed a few years ago, so he called Emma Woke to see if she would help him out. She told him to come on up. He ran the jeans up to her, and he was going to just leave them there. Emma explained that he should have brought a second pair so that she could have something to go by. So we just dropped his pants to the floor, handed them to Emma, and walked out and got in his truck and his gaunch and drove home. Which brings me to mooning. Mooning was a signature David Durnin move. I'm sure almost everyone here has seen his bare ass a time or two. We were downhill skiing in Montana and I lost him. I checked every run, nothing. I headed down to the chalet, and there I see a crowd of people at the back of the room gathered around a picnic table. Then I saw a set of moose antlers that were attached to his toque, and with him in his ski boots on top of the table, mooning. He wasn't lost on a ski trail or hung up on a mountainside. He was entertaining. In his younger years, it was a given. If he was the passenger in the vehicle and was passing someone on the road, you would see his cheeks pressed up against the window. He just liked mooning people. There was another time Cindy and Albert had asked him to pick up a package from Tanis's in Marwayne. David and Rick Franke went to get it. It was a toilet. It was a brand new one from Home Hardware. There was only one thing to do. They opened it up, smeared chocolate pudding all over the seat, and then boxed it back up again and delivered it to Cindy. He got a lot of miles out of that one. When I asked Kevin about his top David story, he just said, oh, there's so many. He said there was this one time that David was headed to a skidoo rally and needed Kevin to weld something onto the skidoo trailer. David thought he would save time and fuel up his sled first that was on the trailer, on the way to the link shop. Kevin McDonald, David Durnin, you can only imagine. Kevin starts welding, and because David wasn't careful when he was fueling up, a welding spark connected with the spilled fuel, and the whole thing started on fire. They got it out, went to the skidoo rally. One year we were hosting Thanksgiving when we lived in the Hannah house here in Dewberry. It was such a beautiful home with light blue carpet. Nice. We had a house full of family and guests from away. It was a lovely meal. Everyone was on track. It was good. And then I could hear David and Auntie Rhoda start. They were teasing, and I just had a feeling. The next thing I know, Rhoda and David are in the middle of a full-fledged pumpkin pie fight. Not the kids, the adults. It was hilarious. Dad was furious. He had to go out for a smoke to settle his nerves. Everyone else was hysterical. Pumpkin pie, whipped cream all over the light blue carpet, all over everyone's faces, in their hair. The guests I had said it was the most fun they'd had at a Thanksgiving dinner ever. That's my crew, wild and woolly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Rhoda and David were actually more like brother and sister. David always made a point of stopping at Rhoda's when he was in Lloyd. Rhoda, he loved visiting with you, and he loved that you let Chief take over your house. David, Kate, and I were able to make a couple of ski trips to the mountains with John and Alan. Funny part of this story is that 40 years ago, it was David taking newbies up to the top and down these dirty black runs. Well, a few years ago, the tables turned and David didn't think it was quite so funny. John and Kate took us down this run and then went ahead of David and I. David and I are both directionally challenged, and we got lost and stuck on a double black. It was really bad. There was a cliff on one side and just straight down lumps and bumps, and it was horrible. So we sat down and had a beer from our backpack, tried to figure out what our best plan of action was. And this is where one of the swear words comes, but it is kind of good. So David was furious at John, and it wasn't John's fault. It was David and I's because we took a wrong turn. We could hear John and Kate all the way at the bottom killing themselves laughing. We decided to take our skis off and then slide down our bums and just hold our skis in our hands. But before we set off, this really decked out, super professional skier comes like swishing up to us. And he goes, just traverse. And David looks up at him and he was mad. He goes, what? And the guy goes, oh, just traverse that way. And David goes, why don't you go fuck yourself? And so the guy just went whoosh, 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 the way he went, and there's Dave and I holding our skis, sliding down this treacherous double black run. Yeah, it was crazy. It took us a while to get down, and John and Kate were hysterical, but they kept their distance. Danny Gray told me the best one yet. I'd never heard it before. Danny and his dad were in the shop having a set to. Actually, even more than a set to. It was heated and intense. Unbeknownst to them, David had accidentally driven his black boogie van into the slough out by Danny's and had walked to Danny's place. In the meantime, Francis had had enough and grabbed the door to storm out of the shop, but the door wouldn't open. They had no idea that David was on the outside of the door, holding it shut. And the next thing they heard was, "What's the password?" Francis Gray, having no idea who was out there or what was going on, and still furious about this situation with Danny, yells, "Fuck off!" Danny and his dad hear, "That's it! That's the password!" So he opens up the door, and there stood David to greet him. And if that didn't break the ice enough, he had put a beer case on his head. Danny said even Francis in his fury had to crack a smile. Cindy Iser's likely David's closest girlfriend, even though she's been married to Darren Isert since she was like 8. Same thing, she couldn't come up with her favorite story because they're all her favorites. David just made her happy. She said it's like his goal was to make people smile. The thing I remember, Cindy, is when you two were chubbier, you would have these diet competitions, and David would phone me and say that he snuck into your house and hid chocolate bars all over your... That's funny. Same for Darren. Darren Isert said every story is the best Dave story. He absolutely couldn't pick one. Growing up, parties, the lake, sledding in the mountains. Ask Darren about that one. David got lost. Hunting, biking, even when they were working. It was always a blast. It was never boring. They just had fun. He just made every situation fun. David and I. This one feels really big. He was more than just my brother. He was my partner in crime. He was my best friend. We just had so much fun together. We laughed at the same things and we laughed a lot. We fought too, a lot. But we always said sorry and got over it. We also shared a lot of sad times. And even though he hated it when I would cry, he'd just listen for a bit and then ask if I wanted a rum and coke. He taught me to enjoy so many things, especially water skiing. He wouldn't quit pulling me until I learned to get up on one. He'd have the whole beach yelling, "Hold on, hold on." And then he'd just keep pushing me to get better. He'd say, "Cut harder. Who cares if you wipe out? That's the only way you'll ever get better." Isn't that life, though? We think we have to do everything perfectly, but it's only when life is messy and we make mistakes that we really learn. David had quite a bit of wisdom behind those little blue eyes. When Kate and I would get into a fight, he would come in and sit in between us to help sort it out. He was terrible at it. But he tried, and he'd always say, "Just say sorry and get over it." He'd follow up with some ridiculous story or something that would inevitably put at least a smile on our faces. I'm not sure if I can pick my top David story either, because there are just so many, and they're all my tops. I just liked spending time with him. We watched the Oilers games, and we went to a few. We spent countless summers at the lake, and he forced me to garden with him. He had such a green thumb, and unfortunately for me, a go hard or go home attitude. When it came to planting, like, we didn't put in 40 hills of potatoes, we had to put in like 400 hills of potatoes. I know it tickled him to tell people how big the garden was and how much I would complain. I loved every minute, even when I was complaining. I do have to admit one tiny story. When I was about 15, I found a spare key to that old blue Chevy with the tiny steering wheel. His truck was parked in front of the bar, and I think I was walking around town with Rhonda Bates. And, we couldn't resist it. So we jumped in the truck and started driving around town. It was like a 5-speeder or something like that. It felt so cool because it was a tiny little steering wheel. We were listening to Meatloaf in the 8-track. Till right by the old church, I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was David Durnin running flat out after us, like mad. I said to Rhonda, "Jump." I said, "Run." So we threw it into neutral, and we left the truck running, and we just ran and hid as fast as we could. He was so mad. Growing up with my brother being 8 years older, I really was the annoying little sister. I tattled a lot, and I really had a lot to tattle on. As much as we fought, he always included me in all of it. His friends became my friends, and you've all become our family. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. Kate and I couldn't have done this past week without you all. Thank you. It's funny. When we look back at the past, it's so easy to see how life has unfolded and how things have fallen into place. We've managed to get through the tough times, and we can remember and feel how good the memories are, and they make us smile. Looking forward, new chapters can sometimes feel uncertain and scary. That's kind of how I feel now. I'm not sure how to live this life without David, because he's just always been in it. I do know, though, grieving is a process and it's possible. It's kind of like the price of love is in the pain of having to say goodbye. And as hard as this one is, it's worth it. And if I had to do it over, I'd choose David to do it with again. Now, we all know that David Durnin goes for the shock factor. He has always said, when I die, I want to be buried in my Camaro, and I want AC/DC Highway to Hell played at my funeral. Great, here we are. Kind of a tall and unconventional order, David Durnin. Cindy Isaac found his model Camaro that is on the display table. That will be buried with him. I was honestly a bit iffy about his song request. Then our dear friend Kevin looked up the lyrics to David's song of choice. He read me the first verse, and it's absolutely perfect. It's on the back of your card. Living easy, loving free, season ticket on a one-way ride. I'm not going to sing this, Candace. Asking nothing, leave me be, taking everything in my stride. Don't need reason, don't need rhyme. Ain't nothing I'd rather do. Going down, party time, my friends are going to be there too. I think this is the perfect song. David lived an amazing life. He accomplished so much, and he had fun. I will miss him, but I know that I'll see him again, and that makes my heart happy. No one likes funerals, especially David. I don't like eulogies, but I almost don't want this one to end. I don't want this chapter to end. I really loved all of the chapters with David in them. Please remember him and all of the hilarious stories, but mostly his kind, kind heart. Let's all make a promise to one another to make this next chapter a great one. David would expect nothing less. We can be sad for ourselves, but please don't be sad for him. His life was too incredible. I know he's on to his next journey, and it will be incredible too. These past few years have been challenging for all of us. Please be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Choose joy in every moment. There's so much in this life to be grateful for, and amazing friends are at the top of the list. Thank you for being an amazing friend to my brother.
You did such a good job, Sherry. It was beautiful. And I do have to admit, when we sat down for arrangements, I had said before we had even sat down, you know, we can play good music at this funeral. AC/DC is totally welcome. I mean, as long as we're not playing Highway to Hell. And I said that completely as a joke, and then they're like, actually, you know what we plan on doing? So but I think it's a perfect tribute to what he wanted for today. Death was once described to me as a feeling that we are a cup of water, and when our death occurs, it's as though we're poured out into the ocean. That feeling of reassurance as we join those who have went before us and become one with the vastness and absence of time. And that even though our physical shell is gone, there will always be an I, and we will never be alone. Of course, we all have our own belief system and differing views on achieving salvation. But I think one thing we can all agree on is that David practiced his deepest convictions. Life is a compilation of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow as it creeps by until the last syllable of recorded time. All of our yesterdays light the way until our death, and then our visible candle is blown out, making life a shadow. Is life, your life, my life, just a mere shadow? What's our purpose in this temporary human experience? Those are some big questions to answer, and each person has their own solution of which can be their biggest aim and biggest disappointment. What were we put on this earth to achieve? Many focus this on material things, of success or wealth. Others make their calling a focus, whether it's to be a doctor, a preacher, a funeral director. We're not our titles, trophies, triumphs, any more than we are our tragedies. The illusion of separateness that puts you in competition with everybody else. The illusion of rightness that makes you feel smug and secure in what you believe and to look down on those who hold, in your opinion, inferior beliefs. The illusion of your own importance that justifies your material opulence while others barely exist. There are a myriad of illusions. So where do we find our purpose? Our purpose is in our actions. Life is not intended to be easy. Hurt, failure, self-doubt, they happen to everyone. No one is spared the many possible negative things that we come upon in our lives. It's easy to fall into habits of self-victimization, asking, why me? Reacting in anger, self-blaming, or giving up, especially when dealing with the grief of a loved one. Yes, we can be sad, and tears should be shed. There's no question that life will be different without the person who made you who you are each and every day. But how will you allow this to change you? All things that are purposeful in your life also needs downfalls in order to be achieved. You can't have strength without first feeling weak. You can't have hope without first feeling lost. And you can't have courage without first facing fear. Most people think that a happy life is the absence of the negative, but in fact, the positive is created out of the mastery of the negative. A physical representation of this is the creation of a pearl. A pearl, though beautiful, is made through its suffering. The foreign substance becomes trapped in the shell of an oyster, and it's like a splinter. It festers and it hurts the oyster as it continues to coat this intruder with the substance to protect itself. And one day, a pearl is formed, and the beautiful part of the oyster is created and continues on. This can be compared to us. As we experience life, we learn how to be strong. We continue with hope. We learn to have courage. And most importantly, we learn to love. Love ourselves and love one another. Our love is the pearl that continues on after we are no more. David was a dedicated man to all he met. He had festivities to be had and deeply loved his family and friends. There's no question that David is going to be sorely missed. And though no longer a visible part of our circle, he still lives on in the hearts and minds of many. His legacy will continue on for many years to come. Let us now take a moment to reflect on his life with a pictorial tribute.
I woke up this morning and the sun was gone. Turned on some music to start my my music, forget the day, and dream of a girl I used to know. I close my eyes and she slipped away. She slipped away.
Hey lady, you got the love I need. Maybe more than enough. Oh darling, 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 walk a while with me. Oh, you got so much, so much, so much.
it's easy. Something wrong around me. There was emptiness, of course, but it's alright, and it's easy, easy loving you, and sunshine, having you around, you're the light I never found, and darling, every minute you're away, but it's brighter, and it's easy, easy loving you.
Well, Mama told me when I was young, said sit beside me, my only son, and listen closely to what I say, and if you do this, it'll help you some sunny day. It will. Oh, take your time, don't live too fast. Troubles will come and they will pass. You'll find a warm arm, and you'll find love. And don't forget that there is a someone up above. And be a simple kind of man. Be something you love and understand. Baby, be a simple kind of man.
Get your lust from the rich man's gold. All that you need now is in your soul. And you can do this, oh baby, if you try. All that I want from you, my son, is to be satisfied and be a simple kind of man. Be something you love and understand. Baby, be a simple kind of man. Won't you do this for me, son, if you can? If you can. Oh, don't you worry, you'll find yourself. Follow your heart and nothing else. And you can do this, oh baby, if you try. All that I want from you, my son, is to be satisfied and be a simple kind of man. Won't you do this for me, son, if you can? So baby, be a simple man. Oh, won't you do this for me, son, if you can?
Today we're going to be going directly into the reception. The graveside will be happening on a later date. We'll be escorting the family out of the hall for a brief period for the recessional, and ask that once the song has concluded that you assist in the setting up of the tables and the organization of the chairs. The tables are just in the back corner there. Once the hall has been set up accordingly, we'll begin with the reception. We'll also have a toonie bar that's going to be available. The proceeds of that is going to be going to our first responders. Just speaking from a personal note, I've worked alongside these wonderful and courageous men and women through my career, and this is an amazing cause. They were very assistful in David's passing. They are just a wonderful crew. I'm sure some of you noticed during the slideshow that we even had a few leaving. It just goes to show that at any point in time that they can be called out to the line of duty, and we appreciate that so much. Once there's an opportunity to grab a drink, we will have a toast in David's memory and then a moment of reflection. I would like to just remind everybody, with us having the bar here, just to please not drink and drive. And if the party here isn't long enough for you, there is an after party at the bar. You will find in the fellowship of today that the telling of David's stories is where the healing begins. We've gathered in this hour not only to grieve the death of David, but to give thanks for his life among us. We have gathered not only to mourn over how different our lives will be without him, but to give thanks for how full life was when he was among us. We have gathered not only to consider the shortness and uncertainty of life, but to give thanks for the time that was granted to David. As you leave today, I remind you that there are 4 things you cannot recover: the stone after the throw, the word after it's been said, the occasion after it's been missed, the time after it's gone. Make the best of the time that you've been granted. All the congregation, please rise.